What if everything you were taught about money is keeping you stuck? In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki reveals the mindset shifts that separate the wealthy from the working class. In today's video, we're breaking down the only 6 financial habits you need to finally escape the rat race and start building real, lasting wealth. Let's start the video. You wake up Monday morning, and before your eyes even open, you feel it, that weight pressing down on your chest. The alarm clock isn't just waking you up, it's reminding you that you're trapped. You drag yourself out of bed, shower, grab coffee, and head to a job where you trade hours for dollars, knowing deep down that no matter how hard you work this week, next month will look exactly the same. You might get a raise, maybe a promotion, but the truth is you're running faster on a treadmill that never stops. This is the rat race, and millions of people spend their entire lives in it without even realizing they have a choice. Robert Kiyosaki's father, the man he calls Poor Dad, had a PhD in a prestigious government job. He believed in working hard, getting good grades, climbing the corporate ladder, and saving money. He did everything society told him was right, and he died broke, leaving behind bills and broken dreams. Meanwhile, Kiyosaki's best friend's father, Rich Dad, barely finished 8th grade but became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. Same island, same economy, radically different results. The difference wasn't intelligence, education, or even opportunity. It was 6 fundamental habits in how they thought about and handled money. Right now, in this moment, you're standing at a crossroads. The world is changing faster than ever before. Artificial intelligence is eliminating jobs that seemed secure just 5 years ago. The gig economy is creating millionaires from laptop entrepreneurs while traditional careers stagnate. Inflation is eroding the value of every dollar you save in a bank account, paying 0.05% interest. The rules have changed, but most people are still playing by the old playbook, the one that leads straight into financial quicksand. What you're about to learn isn't theory. These are the exact mental frameworks and daily practices that separate people who build wealth from people who spend their lives working for it. The first habit that changes everything is this. Wealthy people acquire assets, while poor and middle people acquire liabilities they think are assets. This sounds simple, almost too simple, but this single misunderstanding keeps more people trapped in financial mediocrity than anything else. Rich Dad taught Kiyosaki a definition that contradicts everything most people learn. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. It's not about what something is worth or what it looks like. It's about cash flow, the direction money moves. Here's where most people get it catastrophically wrong. They buy a house, and they call it their greatest asset. They feel proud. They feel like they've achieved the American dream. But every month, that house demands mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. Money flows out of their pocket. That's not an asset by Rich Dad's definition. It's a liability. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't own a home, but it means you need to see reality clearly. Your personal residence, the one you live in, is taking money from you every single month. The wealthy understand this distinction viscerally. They buy rental properties where tenants pay the mortgage and create positive cash flow. They invest in dividend-paying stocks that send checks every quarter. They build businesses that generate revenue while they sleep. Every dollar they deploy is recruited to go out into the world and bring back reinforcements. Look at what's happening right now in the creator economy. Someone builds a YouTube channel teaching people how to edit videos. They create 30 videos over 6 months. Those videos become assets. 5 years later, they're still generating ad revenue, still attracting clients, still working for their creator without requiring additional time. Meanwhile, someone else with the same video editing skills trades their time for $7 an hour. When they stop working, the money stops. Same skill, entirely different financial outcome. One person built an asset, the other sold their time, which is the most limited resource any human possesses. This is why the second critical habit is understanding the difference between working for money and having money work for you. Poor Dad said, "I can't afford it." Rich Dad forbade that phrase in his presence and said he'd say, "How can I afford it?" The first statement shuts down your brain. It's a conclusion, a dead end, an excuse. The second statement opens up possibilities. It forces your mind to become creative, to solve problems, to find opportunities. Your brain is the most powerful asset you'll ever own, but most people never train it to think about money in productive ways. When you work for money, you're in an endless exchange, your time and energy for dollars. The problem is, time is finite. You can't work 25 hours a day. You can't work 8 days a week. There's a ceiling on how much you can earn by trading time for money, no matter how high your hourly rate climbs. But when money works for you, there's no ceiling. While you're sleeping, your investments are growing. While you're on vacation, your business systems are generating revenue. While you're spending time with your family, your rental properties are collecting rent. The wealthy have built machines that multiply their efforts. They've escaped the linear trap of time for money and entered the exponential world of leverage right now. Someone is building a software as e-service product that will generate $300,000 in recurring revenue next year. They'll work intensely for 12 months building it, but once it's done, it runs with minimal maintenance. Compare that to a consultant who bills out at $300 an hour. To make $300,000, they need to bill 1,000 hours. That's 6 months of full-time work every single year, forever, with no compounding, no leverage, no escape velocity. The consultant is sophisticated and well-paid, but they're still trapped in a rat race. The SaaS founder is building an asset that works for them. The third habit is actively studying financial literacy rather than assuming you'll figure it out as you go. This is where poor dad's education failed him. He had a PhD, but he never studied how money actually works. He didn't understand balance sheets, income statements, or the difference between capital gains and passive income. He didn't know how taxes really work, or how the wealthy use legal structures to protect and grow wealth. Rich Dad, despite his 8th grade education, studied money with the intensity of a doctoral student. He read financial statements like novels. He understood tax code. He knew how to use debt as a tool rather than a burden. Here's a test. Do you know the difference between good debt and bad debt? Most people say all debt is bad. They've been conditioned to fear it. But the wealthy use debt strategically to acquire assets that produce more income than the debt costs. If you borrow money at 4% interest to buy a rental property that generates a 12% return, that debt is making you money. It's a tool, a lever that amplifies your results. Meanwhile, borrowing money at 19% interest on a credit card to buy clothes or furniture is financial poison. Same mechanism, completely opposite outcomes. The difference is what you're using the debt to acquire in today's economy. Financial literacy means understanding cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, even if you never invest in them. It means knowing how inflation works and why your grocery bill keeps climbing, even though the government says inflation is under control. It means recognizing that a 401k is better than nothing, but it's not a wealth-building strategy. It's a tax-deferred savings account that you can't access for decades without penalties. The financially literate see opportunities everywhere. They read a news story about rising interest rates and immediately think about how to position their investments. They notice trends in remote work and consider real estate opportunities in emerging cities. They watch AI developments and think about which skills will become more valuable and which will become obsolete. Someone who's financially literate looks at their paycheck differently. They see the line items for federal tax, state tax, social security, Medicare, and they understand these are their largest expenses, often dwarfing their mortgage or rent. They start asking how legal entities like LLCs and S corporations can reduce their tax burden. They learn about retirement accounts, health savings accounts, and business expense deductions. They discover that the tax code is actually written to incentivize certain behaviors like real estate investing and business ownership, and they start playing the game by the actual rules instead of the simplified version they were taught. The fourth essential habit is letting fear and greed work for you instead of against you. Poor Dad was driven by fear, the fear of not having enough, of losing his job, of taking risks that might fail. This fear made him cling to security which turned out to be an illusion. When the government restructured and his position was eliminated after decades of loyal service, his security vanished overnight. Rich Dad felt the same fears, every human does, but he trained himself to use fear as a signal rather than a stop sign. When he felt afraid of an investment, he'd study harder, learn more, and if the fundamentals were sound, he'd move forward despite the fear. Fear became information, not a command. Greed works the same way. Poor Dad's greed was unconscious and reactive. When he got a raise, he immediately thought about what he could buy: a newer car, a bigger house, nicer vacations. His expenses rose to match his income, keeping him trapped. Rich Dad's greed was conscious and strategic. When he made more money, he thought first about what assets he could acquire. His greed made him hungry for investments, for opportunities, for ways to expand his asset column. Same emotion, weaponized in completely different directions. This, what is playing out right now in the freelance economy. Someone starts freelancing and makes their first $5,000 month. One person immediately upgrades their apartment, buys a new laptop, and celebrates with expensive dinners. Their lifestyle expands to consume the new income. Another person takes that same $5,000 and funnels it into building productized services, hiring a virtual assistant, or creating digital products that generate passive income. 5 years later, the first person is still freelancing for $5,000 a month, stressed and overworked. The second person has built a business, doing $200,000 a year with a team, working 20 hours a week, the same starting point. But one person let greed drive them toward consumption, while the other channeled it toward asset accumulation. The fifth habit is recognizing that your most important investment is in your own financial education and skill development. Rich Dad constantly pushed Kiyosaki to learn new things, not for the sake of knowledge but for practical application. He'd say, "Job is an acronym, just over broke." He believed most people stay broke not because they don't work hard, but because they don't know how to make money work hard for them. Every skill you develop, every book you read about money, every course you take on investing or business is an asset that can never be taken from you. The economy can crash, your job can disappear, your house can lose value. But the knowledge in your head and the skills you've developed compound forever. Think about someone who spends 3 months learning about options trading or real estate, syndication, or how to build an online course. That investment of time, maybe 100 hours, can generate returns for decades. Compare that to someone who spends 100 hours watching Netflix or scrolling social media. Both people spend the same time, but the trajectory of their lives will diverge dramatically because of how they invested their most precious non-resource attention. In the AI economy we're entering right now, this habit becomes even more critical. The skills that were valuable 20 years ago might be automated in the next 5. But learning how to use AI tools, understanding prompt engineering, knowing how to build systems that leverage technology, these meta skills will create enormous opportunities. The people who invest in learning about emerging technologies won't just survive the disruption, they'll thrive in it. Meanwhile, people who refuse to adapt, who cling to the old ways, will watch their economic value erode year after year, until they're competing with algorithms that work for free. The sixth and final habit is understanding that you work to learn, not to earn, especially early in your career. Poor dad believed you should find a secure job with good benefits and stay there for 30 years. Rich dad thought that was insane. He believed you should deliberately seek out experiences that teach you valuable skills, even if they pay less initially. Kiyosaki worked in sales, joined the Marine Corps, learned about real estate, studied business operations, not because each job paid the most, but because each taught him something different that he could later combine into a powerful skill set. This might be the most counterintuitive habit because it requires short-term sacrifice for long-term gain, and humans are wired to prefer immediate gratification. Someone takes a job at a startup for 30% less than they could make at a corporation, but they learn product development, marketing, fundraising, and operations. 3 years later, when they start their own company, those skills are worth millions. Someone else took the higher-paying corporate job and spent 3 years doing narrow specialized work. They're now pigeonholed in that specialty. Their skill set isn't transferable, and they're completely dependent on remaining employed in that specific role. Look at the creator economy through this lens. Someone spends a year building an audience on social media, making almost nothing. They learn video editing, copywriting, audience psychology, platform algorithms, and how to sell digital products. That year feels like a waste to their friends with traditional jobs. But in year 2, they launch a course that does $75,000 in revenue. In year 3, they hit $300,000. The skills compounded, the audience compounded, the knowledge of what works compounded. They worked to learn for a year, and now they're earning at a level they're traditionally employed. Friends won't reach for another decade, if ever. Here's what all 6 of these habits have in common. They require you to think differently about money than you were taught. The school system never teaches this. Your parents probably don't know this. Society actively pushes you in the opposite direction, toward consumption, toward trading time for money, toward the illusion of security and employment. The system benefits from you staying in the rat race. You're a reliable consumer, a dependable taxpayer, a predictable employee. The moment you start acquiring assets, learning about money, and building systems that generate income without your constant labor, you're breaking out of the pattern that keeps the machine running. And that's exactly why most people never do it. Not because they can't, but because it requires going against everything they've been conditioned to believe. It requires tolerating short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. It requires making decisions that look weird to your peers. When everyone else is buying new cars and bigger houses, you're buying rental properties and index funds. When everyone else is working their way up the corporate ladder, you're building a side business that might not pay off for years. When everyone else is consuming content, you're creating assets. The consequences of ignoring these habits are plain. Whatever around you. People in their 50s and 60s who worked hard their entire lives, who did everything they were supposed to do, facing retirement with almost nothing saved. People who made 6 figures for decades but still live paycheck to paycheck because their expenses rose to match their income. People whose specialized skills became obsolete, who got downsized at 55 and discovered no one will hire them at their previous salary. The rat race doesn't end with a prize. It ends with exhaustion and regret. But here's what's possible. When you embrace these 6 habits, you can build a life where money is no longer the primary factor in your decisions, where you choose how to spend your time based on what fulfills you, not what pays the bills, where unexpected expenses are minor inconveniences rather than catastrophes, where you have the resources to help your family support causes you believe in and create opportunities for others, where your children learn about money from someone who actually understands it. Breaking the generational cycle of financial ignorance. The gap between where you are now and where you could be isn't a matter of intelligence or luck. It's a matter of habits, the daily decisions you make about money, learning, and risk. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't a book about getting rich quick. It's a book about thinking differently. And thinking differently leads to acting differently. And acting differently over time creates completely different results. You now know the 6 habits. The only question is what you'll do with this knowledge. Will it become another interesting thing you learned and forgot? Or will it become the turning point where you stopped running in the rat race and started building the exit? Escaping the rat race isn't about luck, it's about habits. The 6 financial habits we discussed today, inspired by Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, aren't complicated. What they require discipline. Remember, the rich don't work for money, they build assets that work for them. The question is, will you stay in the cycle or will you start building your exit? If you found value in this video, hit like, subscribe, and start applying at least one of these habits today. Your future self will thank you.